Did you know that a lot of digestive issues are caused by a potential toxin that's in all of the quote healthy foods that scientists have been telling us to eat with a fraudulent food pyramid for the longest time? Warning signs include weight gain and fatigue, digestive discomfort and stiff joints, even skin problems. Well, Dr. Gundry, a world-renowned cardiologist, explains these side effects are often mistaken for normal signs of aging because digestive issues develop usually over a matter of years and sometimes even decades. He says the damage is probably caused by these health foods and it's far from normal. The good news is you can easily help fix the problem from your own home. It's very simple. You just have to know which foods are actually healthy and which contain this hidden potential toxin. So you can go find this yourself at gutcleanseprotocol.com/inspired, because after years of research, Dr. Gundry has decided to release an informative video to the public, free and uninterrupted, showcasing exactly which foods you need to avoid. Go find that video at gutcleanseprotocol.com/inspired or click on the link in the video description below.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to an Inspired live stream. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. That's the mantra of the Inspired live streams. And it's good to see you. Thank you for tuning into Rumble, tuning into YouTube. Gerald, good to see you. Natasha, good to see you. Michael, Clinton, welcome everybody. Let us know in the live chat or later in the comments where you're tuning in from. We always love seeing how we connect all over the place. So this morning, we posted a short snippet, a video of an interview we did last year with David Icke. And in that short 2-minute video, David talked about the Akashic records. He talked about near-death experiences, the light, what people experience, and what he believes this actually is. Now, in his perception, and according to his research, many others, by the way, now, he said that the near-death experiences, this whole thing that happens after somebody leaves the body, is actually part of the simulation, part of the AI simulation, and that the Akashic records are an AI database. Now, these kinds of messages are oftentimes very triggering. I want to make clear that we don't share this. We don't share these videos, do these interviews, or do anything we do to trigger people. There's a lot of people out there who base their whole work on just triggering people, creating that shocking reaction, and then showing it to other people for entertainment purposes or whatever. But that's not what we want to do. The question is, why can different people look at the same information or be exposed to apparently the same information and have vastly different perceptions and different reactions? Why do people share the same space and have a completely different experience of that reality? Why can two neighbors living on the same road in the same town under the same sky, one it lives a life of abundance and freedom, and the other one is completely shackled in his reality? The question is, are we living in the same reality? Are we sharing the same reality, or are we all living in different realities? And I think this is a question worth pondering on, and I'm going to give you my take. And I want to start with an example that many of you might know or might have heard of. Let's say you have a big tech app like Instagram, social media app, downloaded to your phone. And if you had, let's say you follow 100 people, exactly the same people as the person next to you, we would do an experiment and they would follow the 100 people that you follow. So basically you would put the same likes on the same people. Still, you and that person would have a completely different feed every single time. We have seen this in the early days of Google, for example. When you typed something into Google and looked for information on that, most people, or probably all people, got the same search results. Very soon, they didn't anymore, and now they don't. Now we could type in the same information to Google and we'll get different results. Why is that? Well, because the algorithm got very sophisticated, and it is picking what? It is picking up on your general outlook on your digital reality. What else do you type into Google? What else are you looking for? What other websites are you visiting? And then it will fine tune to your consciousness. And that is the truth. It fine tunes to your consciousness. So your experience and the experience of the next person are vastly different. So the internet and everything that's technological is always only an imitation of the real thing. Because see, the technocratic world cannot create anything that wasn't created in the real world before. So that's why we see so many examples. Of course, it's a bad copy, it's a bad imitation, but still it portrays some truth. So now we have to ask ourselves, what is it that makes you see something looking at the same piece of information and somebody else is looking at the same piece of information and they can't see it? How was it that over the last 3-4 years, so many people were able to wake up because they were presented with information, they were presented with evidence, they were presented with a body of research, and they were able to make or to analyze and come to new conclusions, and others rejected that information before even looking at it? They could not. So are we saying that the reality that you're experiencing and the reality that I'm experiencing is different? I would say yes. But is the reality really different? Or is it our perception of it? And this is where we get into the key point. And this is why we have these expressions in our world where we say, oh, we don't see eye to eye. What does that mean? It's a synonym for not perceiving the world or certain things about the world in the same way. Or we're not at the same wavelength. Have you heard that before? Not the same wavelength. Could this actually be a factual description of what's happening? If you're vibrating at this level here and somebody else is vibrating here, how could you possibly have the same perception of what you're looking at? You can't. This is at the root of all conflict in our world, is that different people are programmed to see things in a different way. And so now we are fighting over who is right and who has the right perception. This is what is at the core of the conflicts that we see in the world, is literally fighting over who is right and who is wrong. And so often, right, what determines who is right and who's wrong is who's stronger, who's got the bigger gun, who's got the bigger bomb. And that determines who's going to be right in that conflict. So what is the solution? Because this is the real problem that nobody's talking about. It's the level of consciousness that we're at. And so I want to show you something. This might maybe explain it a little further, how our perception of things can be distorted. You might have seen this example. In that little screen here, or there's a camera guy apparently. And what is the camera guy doing? He's zooming in on a particular piece of the reality he's observing. Now, the viewer on TV will see whatever the cameraman is focusing on. But if you look at the real picture, it's a completely different scenario. Actually, it's exactly the other way around than what media is showing us. And this is so often the case, but media is only it's one symptom of the underlying problem. I'll show you another one that's similar to that. You see a little boy laying on the ground with a boot on his face. It's horrible, right? It's absolutely horrifying. And if you would see that, I mean, you would try to do anything you can to make people aware of this and change the situation. But then you look at reality, it's really the little boy playing a game where he put the boot on his face and he's laughing. I'm not saying everything we're being shown on media is like that, but a lot of it is. But the point is, ultimately, I think we were programmed so that we wouldn't even need this kind of deception. We would see the deception through our own eyes because we're not tuned to truth. How often have you heard actually that somebody says, well, this is my truth. And that's triggering to a lot of people, because there's people that say, no, there's only the truth. There's no such thing as my truth. But that's not quite true. There is such a thing as your perception of the truth. You could be looking at something, and depending on where you stand and what your level of consciousness is and openness and whatever else is needed for that, you could see a thing and you could perceive a part of the truth, but not the whole truth. So for you, that's your truth. The next person looks at the exact same thing, but they perceive less or more than you, and so their truth is different again. So this is why when you break it all down, and this is why when you really want to create real change, not just for yourself, but for the whole, there's only one path, and that is to tune into the vibration of truth with our consciousness. And that means we have to elevate our level of consciousness as high and as far up as possible on the scale, because then we do not fall into these traps. And all of them are traps. And this is exactly what I think we're going to see unfold over the next months and years. How this matrix reality works is that things are being propped up. Belief systems are being propped up. Religions are being propped up. Political systems are being propped up. And people are being programmed over generations to put all their faith and trust in these beliefs and political systems and economic systems and whatnot. It's like, okay, here is what we have to believe in. And then when the time comes that the people are fully invested in that version of reality, the creators of this reality, they tear it down and they show you the deception. They know from the start that that wasn't the truth, but then they show you it wasn't the truth. For what? To disillusion you. Because when you're disillusioned, you're frantically looking for something new to put your faith in. This is what we're seeing. This is how the system works. They build someone up. They build a political figure up. They build a leader up. And when that leader is at the height, oftentimes they will tear him down. The same people who built him up will tear him down. Why? Because now you've invested all your faith, all your energy, all of everything into that person. And now they're showing you that they're not who you thought they were. And you stay disillusioned. You are lost because you've just done that. And this is what we're seeing at a large scale. This system, especially over the 20th century, in about 100 years, a little over 100 years, it was propped up and it was set in stone and it was presented to the whole world as the holy grail, the truth. The 9-to-5s, the forms, the governments, the military, the wars, the money, everything, the materialism, everything was shown as this is the truth. Now it's being all in front of everybody dismantled. And all people are losing more and more and more and more and more trust in it. And there are two things that can happen. Number one, people go within and they access the inner world. That is the real world, I would say. They access something much higher, something that transcends this matrix here. Or number two, they're looking frantically for the next thing to believe in. And the creators of this matrix, they're going to give him that. They're going to give him that. They're going to give him their perfect solution. Here, this was a lie, but now we give you the truth. Believe in it, invest in it, become it. I would say that we are living in different realities, but what determines that is our perception, our ability to perceive. And like some people are colorblind, so they cannot perceive or distinguish between colors, or some people really don't see the shades of color. Now imagine, and you might be one, by the way, who's watching, but imagine how vastly different the perception of reality is if you can't see colors versus someone who sees colors. But then how do we know that we're actually looking or perceiving the same color? How do we know? We don't know, because there's only one set of eyes that we're looking through. And what if someone is deaf? Well, when they're deaf, their perception of reality is completely different. Or when they're blind, their perception of reality is completely different. And now we're just talking about the senses, the physical senses, and how they are interpreting the simulation, the signals that we're receiving. We haven't even talked about spiritual perception, intuitive perception. We haven't talked about what we see beyond the senses and how vastly different the experience is depending on that. So if we ever want to create a harmonious experience of life, then we have to first work at vibrating at a similar level of consciousness. And this, to my knowledge, hasn't happened in a very long time for the human family. Today, the differences are vast, and that's what allows us to fall into the trap of conflict all the time. Because when we harmonize ourselves, and I would go and say that if we harmonize ourselves to the true vibration of nature, of true nature, not matrix nature, not the false reality, but of true nature, if we tune into that, we will begin vibrating at that wavelength. And what's going to happen is that we will begin to all tuning into the same radio station, if you will. Now, if we tune into the true radio station, because there's really only one true radio station, all the other radio stations are just shades of truth. They're just, or shades of falsehood. They're not the truth. But if we begin tuning into the radio station of the truth, we all will begin hearing, seeing, and feeling very similar, if not the same things, the things that are actually projected from prime reality, from the creator's prime reality to us. Now then, we can stop arguing about our different perceptions about who's right and who's wrong, because then we're tuning into the real thing. And this is what we're slowly but surely beginning to realize is happening for people on a greater level. Now, this sounds so abstract and it sounds so unpractical. And people say, well, how do we do this on a political level? But there are the wars and there are the conflicts. The truth is that if we want to elevate our consciousness to that level, we have to pretty much, for long periods of time, ignore the perceptual reality around us. Not ignore in terms of becoming apathetic or non-compassionate, but we have to tune into something bigger. We have to, let me show you this again. It is just a very simple example, but if we want to see the big picture, we have to step away from those who want us to see a version of it. And this is why, by the way, over the last years, we were all encouraged to perceive reality simply through the screen that we're looking through right now. As a matter of fact, I was just presented, believe it or not, with the opportunity to try out a new software that would, rather than me going on and having an interview with someone, the software would send my questions to that person and then record their answers as if we were in a live setting. So it would simulate a digital interview, because apparently podcasters don't have enough time anymore to even have a real digital interview with someone. It's ridiculous to think that could possibly be beneficial to us. It's not. We're being discouraged from having conversations in real life. We're being discouraged from having contact. We're being discouraged from sharing deep conversations with each other. And I think that's the only way how we can actually move forward. But the work begins within. This has been the message now that we've been getting over and over again. It's the level of consciousness and your intuitive ability determines how you experience reality. And that's why I said, that's why two people living in the same household, having the access to the same water, the same air, the same everything, one can be in the stream of abundance of life, experience freedom and joy, and the other one can be in a completely different stream of consciousness. So it's not their surroundings that determine that. It is their inner state of being that determines that. And my message is, our message is, that that's what we need to work on the most. And to me, it's like a tuning fork. I don't know if you've ever seen a tuning fork, or, now we have digital tuners because everything's digital, but it means that you are calibrating yourself to the consciousness, to the energy of truth. And then truth is not good, is not bad, is not wrong, is not right. It just is. If we can see the whole of truth and perceive it, we win. We win. Everything that is not truth then must cease to exist by law, by the laws of the universe, if you will. And I think that's, see, I've often asked myself, because I have a vastly different perception of death than most people. And so mourning and grieving are, I guess, human reactions to loss, and they are mostly reactions to the experience of not having that experience with a person anymore, right? So why we're really grieving and mourning is because we feel sad that we're not going to see that person anymore. It's not really about that person being gone or dead, because they're not, but it's about our experience, right? So over the years, I have practiced, whenever I would hear of a death, I would practice a different perception, a very different perception. Now, the true test is when someone close to you passes away. And of course, I am just as, I have a human experience. I have sadness. I have all these feelings. But ultimately, the question is, can we transcend those human feelings for a broader state of awareness in that moment when it happens? In that moment when shit hits the fan, can we transcend? This is what we're all being tested with right now. When we see the chaos, when we see the wars, when we see the conflict, the suffering, can we transcend that without becoming apathetic, without becoming non-compassionate? But can we transcend into a greater state of perception? Because that is what ultimately, the only thing that can bring about a state of greater harmony and peace. If we invest in that, and if we over and over and over again react in the same ways, we're going to get to the same place. That's the only way it can be. You do the same things, you get the same results. It's insanity to think that you can do the same things and get different results. Now, my innermost intention is not to win the war. It's to end all wars, starting with the inner wars, starting with the wars that we're fighting within ourselves, because that's what we reflect into this reality. And that's why the inner cleanup and raising our consciousness and healing is so, so, so important. That's why this is the most important work in the world today. And then we can start harmonizing our realities, right? This is what people call ascension, I believe. They call it ascension into a new dimension, into a new reality. And maybe this is not a physical thing that happens. Maybe it's a perceptual thing that happens, and we transcend the previous limitations of our perceptions. I think this is the path to go, and ultimately this does trigger a lot of people, because what will happen, as I said before, and I just want to give you a heads up, what will happen is that a lot of the people in the world will be shook to their core, because everything that they believed in will turn out to be wrong. Everything. I mean, everything. Not entirely wrong, but some things entirely and some things at least partially. But ultimately, it will be shown, if people are willing to see it, that everything we believed in was wrong. You can only really stomach that and get through that when you have something much higher that guides you, when you're connected to something much higher that guides you. It's within our limited humanness, it would destroy us. But I'm reminded of similar experiences that different peoples have had over just the last 100 years. you know um I was born in socialist Yugoslavia. Okay, so that system went down and a completely new system was presented. It's maybe not completely new, but perceptually it's very new. The Soviet Union, when it came down, and the perestroika happened, and glasnost and all these movements happened, what the people were told is all those idols that you believed in, all those heroes that you believed in, you are now to hate them, and you're now to believe in new heroes and new idols. And it happens over a very short period of time. But over a very short period of time, the population was guided into a different new direction, and they had to hate what they loved before. That's the part that I said before. You prop them up and then you tear them down. And what that does to the spirit is it hurts the spirit, because you're realizing, shit, I've been deceived, right? Apparently I wasn't right to believe in these people. Well, now I should believe in these people. Well, let's give it a try. And this is the eternal game. It is so that we never really discover and arrive at a place where we can truthfully, with our own spirit and our own intuition, perceive truth, accept truth for what it is. And so this is what's going, and it's happening in America now. It has been going on for years and decades, but it's coming to an extreme where everything that people believed in before is being questioned and torn down. And for this particular process, the gloves come off. They don't care how it happens, as long as people get disillusioned. And we must get disillusioned and see through the illusion once and for all. That is really the task. So what I predict will happen is everything will come down. Everything that people thought was true and right and righteous will come down. It will not all be completely false, but it will appear as if it was all completely false. And the only way that people can get through this is by raising their level of consciousness, because then it won't affect them, because they're already tuned into the radio station of truth. It doesn't matter anymore what happens on the screens, on the surface of reality. But these pretend controllers, they have their goal of what they want to implement. And it is the mother of all systems, a system that is, when really implemented, almost unbreakable, unchangeable. That's what they have in mind. And it is only consciousness and nothing else that can not just prevent that from happening, but transcend that kind of reality. Now, does that mean we stop doing anything? We stop sweeping the floor? We stop going to work? We stop putting food on the table? No, don't be dumb. Don't be dumb. We still live within this construct here for now, but it means we have to look at things in a vastly different way. And there's a quote, and I don't know if it originated with Wayne Dyer, but I know he used it a lot. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Let me repeat that. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's true. It's very true. All right, my friends, thank you for tuning in. I know this is food for thought. It's provocative. I know it's provocative when we share videos about how when we leave this body, the deception doesn't end. It's still there. But I didn't come up with it, to be quite honest. It's been in all cultures. It's been in all religions. Most cultures, belief systems, and religious streams actually, in so many words, call this a fake reality, or not the real reality, or a copy, or a simulation, or the Maya, or the illusion. I mean, all over the world, you look at cultures and they will say that. Now we use in our perception, a more technological term, because I think that's what a lot of people can understand now versus 50, 60 years ago. The word simulation wouldn't have meant as much as it does now. I know this is triggering. And I know it's triggering to, let's say, believers, Christian believers, but I'm not actually saying stop believing what you believe. What I'm saying is there are more layers to this. It's not just this world and then the next world, and that's all there is. There's much, much more. And why wouldn't there be? Why wouldn't there be? And why would deception and lies only pertain to this reality and not the next world? Why? What's the rationale behind it? A lot of it points to the fact that this is a simulated reality. A lot of it does. And ultimately, from my own intuition, I can only tell you this, and this is all I'm going to say for today, is that there are places in the world where I feel connected more, where I enjoy life more, where I have seems to be a deeper experience. All of that is true, but I never feel like I belong here, ever. There's no place in the world where I feel, oh, I belong. This is home. This is it. This is the one home. No, I really don't, because I don't think my spirit ultimately belongs here. I know a lot of people have that feeling. Come to accept it and explore infinite possibility, I've seen there's much more to this picture. All right, my friends. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for your contribution. I see it up there. I was so in the live stream, I didn't even, let me see. Leslie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you all. Thank you for tuning in. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll be back with you again very, very soon.